I moved to Sycamore Grove for peace, not politics. The neighborhood looked like it had been plucked from a postcard. White picket fences, identical mailboxes, flower beds trimmed to military precision. But beneath the HOA-mandated beauty was a rod of control and entitlement, embodied in one woman, Cheryl Langley. She didn't just run the HOA, she was the HOA, blonde, brittle, and always dressed in pastel suits, like she was campaigning for mayor of suburbia. Cheryl had declared herself the guardian of community standards. No one had voted for her in years. She simply was, like a weed that refused to die. From the moment I moved into 802 Hickory Drive, I could feel her eyes on me. My house, unlike the others, was paid for outright. No mortgage, no liens, no HOA dues. Thanks to a legal loophole in the original development charter, certain lots, including mine, were exempt from compulsory membership. I was well within my rights to remain outside the HOA's jurisdiction. But Cheryl didn't believe in loopholes. On my second morning in the house, I found a note on my porch in neon pink ink. Welcome. HOA dues are $130 month. Prompt payment ensures harmony. I tossed it in the trash. The next day, a second note appeared, typed this time, taped to my door. Reminder, trash bins must be placed curbside no earlier than 6 a.m. and retrieved no later than 8 p.m. Non-compliance may result in fines. I hadn't even put out my bins yet. From there, the passive aggression escalated. Anonymous complaints about the angle of my porch light. Unsolicited citations for unapproved landscaping. Once, I caught her measuring the distance between my mailbox and the curb with a tape measure. I made it clear, firmly but politely, that I wasn't part of her little fiefdom. I'm not in the HOA, I said one afternoon, as she hovered at the edge of my driveway, holding a clipboard like a weapon. Her smile was thin, mechanical. Oh, everyone's part of the neighborhood, Mr. Quinn. We all have to follow some rules, but not your rules, I replied, and turned my back. That's when she decided to up the ante. The next week, I came home to find her in my backyard. She was inspecting my shed, as if it was some alien object. I confronted her. "This is trespassing," I said, voice calm but sharp. She blinked. "Just making sure your outbuildings meet safety codes. HOA protocol. I'm not under the HOA." She tilted her head like she hadn't heard me. "We have a master key for emergencies. It's perfectly legal." I took a slow step forward. "This isn't an emergency. And if you or anyone uses a key on my property without permission again, I will press charges." She left in a huff, but not before muttering something that stuck with me. "Sometimes people forget they live in a community. That can be corrected." After that, I installed new locks, industrial grade, cameras too. I wasn't paranoid. I was cautious, because people like Cheryl don't stop until they're stopped. For a few weeks, things simmered. No more notes, no more citations. I thought maybe the message had sunk in. I was wrong. The real storm hit on a Thursday afternoon. It was hot, the air thick with the scent of summer rain and cut grass. I was sanding a piece of oak in my garage workshop when I heard something that made my blood turn to ice. The click of my front doorknob turning. Then again. I stepped into the hall just as the knob rattled violently. Someone was trying to get in. I flung the door open, and there stood Cheryl Langley, drenched in sweat, holding a gold-plated master key in one hand and her phone in the other. She blinked in surprise, as if I was the intruder. "This key's supposed to work," she snapped. "What did you do to the lock?" I stared at her, stunned. "Are you actually trying to break into my home?" She raised her chin defiantly. "You've been non-compliant. I had to check the property. You left. Me no choice. You had every choice. You chose this. Her fingers danced across her phone. I'm calling 911. You're threatening me. You're trespassing, I countered. But she'd already pressed the dial, and as she spoke into the phone, describing me as hostile and dangerous, I could see her expression change. Confusion washing over her face, like a tide pulling out, because on the other end of that call was someone she never expected. Someone who would bring her rain crashing down. My son, the dispatcher. Cheryl's voice trembled slightly, even as she tried to maintain that forced composure. Yes, I'm being harassed. No, I had to enter because he's been aggressive with HOA board members. Yes, I used the master key. She paused, her brow furrowed. A long silence hung between her and the 911 operator. Then she blinked hard, like the signal on the other end had glitched. Dispatcher. I'm sorry, what did you just say? Another pause. I folded my arms across my chest and leaned against the door frame, watching her unravel in real time. Yes, I'm at 802 Hickory Drive. What does that have to do with? She stammered, then froze. Her eyes slowly met mine, widening. Her mouth opened slightly. You're his, she whispered, barely loud enough for me to hear. I raised an eyebrow. My son. Yeah, that's Danny you're talking to. Her phone slipped a little in her grip. I didn't know he was your son. Didn't think you needed to know, Cheryl. But I know you've been misusing that key for years. Now you've done it to the wrong house, with the wrong family. She clutched her phone again. Dispatcher. I may have exaggerated. There's no danger. I think everything's fine now. The line crackled, and I could just make out the clipped, professional tone of my son's voice. Stay on. The line, ma'am. Officers are en route. She looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. Less than 4 minutes later, the sound of a cruiser pulling up shattered the still air. Officer Martinez stepped out first. Solid, no nonsense, with mirrored sunglasses that reflected Cheryl's panic perfectly. His partner, Deputy Collins, followed. Both wore neutral expressions, but their body language said everything. This wasn't just another neighborly dispute. Ma'am, Martinez began. We received a report of a possible attempted entry. Can you confirm your name? Cheryl straightened, her blouse like she was about to argue her way out of a speeding ticket. I'm Cheryl Langley, president of the Sycamore Grove HOA. This is all a huge misunderstanding. She gestured to me. He's been non-compliant. I had reason to believe there was a problem inside the home. I attempted a wellness check. Collins scribbled something on a notepad. Are you law enforcement? She faltered. Well, no, but under HOA regulation, You're not a first responder. You're not on his property with a warrant. You're not family. You don't have consent, Martinez said flatly. Which means you had no legal right to use any key, master, or otherwise. Her eyes flared. This is ridiculous. That key's been used for years. Emergency protocols allow. Those protocols don't apply here. I cut in. I'm not a member. I never signed a contract. You knew that. You just didn't care. Cheryl turned to me, voice rising. You're acting like I'm a criminal. Officer Martinez tilted his head. That depends. Do you know how many homes you've used that key on without permission? Well, it's standard practice. That's not what I asked. Before she could stammer another excuse, Danny's voice crackled through the officer's radios. Be advised, he said calmly. Homeowner has no legal obligation to HOA oversight. Parcel 802 was exempt per 2008 charter revision. Per county code, attempted entry by non-consensual party may qualify as criminal trespass. Silence. Collins looked up. That your son? I nodded. Cheryl, meanwhile, looked like someone had unplugged her from the wall. This is a witch hunt, she hissed. I didn't mean any harm. Harm isn't a requirement, Martinez replied. Intent and action are. She was cited on the spot for trespassing. It wasn't an arrest, but the citation went on record. Her precious master key was confiscated, slipped into an evidence bag with a satisfying snap. As she retreated to her Lexus, face red and fists clenched, she turned back and hissed, You'll regret this. You just made an enemy. No, I said calmly. You made a mistake, and now you've made it public. That night, Danny called me after his shift. You all right? He asked. Better than all right. You? He chuckled. She didn't know who she was messing with. I paused. She's not done, you know. No, he agreed. But neither are we, because Cheryl hadn't just crossed a boundary. She kicked down a door, metaphorically and almost literally, and in doing so, revealed a pattern of behavior that had gone unchecked for too long. But now there was a record, and soon there'd be consequences. The fallout didn't take long to ripple through Sycamore Grove like a stone dropped in still water. By Monday morning, every mailbox in the neighborhood had a flyer, unsigned of course, defending Cheryl's heroic efforts to maintain order and warning that unruly residents threaten the harmony of our community. It didn't mention her forced entry or the trespassing citation or the fact that the unruly resident was exempt from HOA rules, just the kind of half-truth propaganda Cheryl specialized in. But she had encountered on the neighborhood whisper network turning against her. 3 houses down, Mrs. Halpin told me over her garden fence that Cheryl once entered her backyard to measure tree height. The old man across the street, Mr. Nguyen, confessed that Cheryl demanded to inspect his attic during a roof slope audit. Stories trickled in. Quiet resentment found its voice. The Queen of Sycamore Grove had ruled by fear, not respect, and now the peasants were revolting. I didn't even need to organize anything. The neighborhood spoke for itself. One couple, the Callahans, printed a full timeline of Cheryl's known violations: trespassing, misuse of HOA funds, forging digital signatures, and anonymously slipped copies under every door. Someone else uploaded the HOA charter to a public site and highlighted a clause that allowed for leadership impeachment with just 30 signatures. Cheryl was losing control, and she knew it, so she did what cornered tyrants always do. She escalated. It started. Subtly, a city inspector showed up at my door with a clipboard, asking about unpermitted structural changes to my shed. He looked confused when he saw how pristine it was. The next day, animal control arrived in response to an anonymous tip about unregistered livestock. I didn't even own a pet. I played it cool. I kept documentation. I smiled for every officer and agent, handed them cold water, and let them do their jobs. But then, she made it personal. Late one night, I caught Cheryl standing at the edge of my driveway, flashlight in hand, scribbling into a notebook. When I stepped outside and cleared my throat, she didn't even flinch. You really think you've won? She asked without turning. I didn't answer. She turned slowly to face me. Her eyes had lost that fake pleasant glaze. What remained was raw entitlement, something uglier than any HOA rulebook. You're not special, she snapped. You think your son being a dispatcher means you get a free pass? This is my neighborhood, my rules. Not anymore, I said quietly. You think the HOA will throw me out? I built this place. No, I said, stepping forward. The community built this place. You just bullied it For a moment, I thought she might come at me, but instead, she walked back to her car and peeled off down the street. The next morning, things exploded. Someone, no one knew who, leaked a video compilation from neighborhood security cams. Cheryl peering over fences, opening gates, even attempting to enter another resident's garage. One clip showed her yelling at a child for using chalk on a sidewalk. Another showed her screaming into a Ring doorbell after someone didn't mow their lawn on schedule. It went viral, first in the neighborhood, then across town. That same afternoon, the HOA board called an emergency meeting. For the first time in over a decade, Cheryl didn't chair it, and for the first time ever, residents showed up in droves. 57 signatures. That's all it took. She tried to argue. Tried to invoke rules no one had ever read. She demanded to speak. She even threatened lawsuits. But the vote was final. Cheryl Langley was formally removed as HOA president. Her master key privileges revoked. Her pending code violations turned over to the county. And just like that, the empire she had ruled with smug condescension collapsed. But for me, it wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about reclaiming peace, reclaiming safety, reclaiming dignity from a woman who treated our homes like her chessboard. Still, I had one more move to make, because Cheryl wasn't done, not in her mind, and I knew exactly how she'd lash out next. That's why I had a camera running. That's why I kept every voicemail, every notice, every false report, because people like Cheryl never go quietly. They go kicking and screaming, right into the spotlight. 2 weeks after Cheryl was removed from the HOA, you'd think she'd have learned her lesson. But power doesn't just disappear. It clings. It festers. She tried to hold court on Facebook, spinning tales of victimhood and sabotage, painting herself as a martyr whose only crime was caring too much. But screenshots told the real story. Neighbors shared years' worth of her text messages, emails, even video clips. Each one chipped away at the myth she had built around herself. And yet, Cheryl wasn't done. That's when the midnight calls started. Not to me, but to the city. Anonymous complaints about zoning infractions. Whispers about my house being illegally sublet. Baseless accusations filed with the assessor's office, claiming I had made unpermitted electrical upgrades. I knew it was her. I could hear it in the language. Her signature phrases: community compliance, neighborhood integrity, suspicious behavior. But I wasn't rattled, because I'd spent those 2 weeks building something too. A file. I had screenshots of every bogus report, video footage of her pacing at the end of my driveway at 2 a.m., even audio from a neighbor's doorbell cam, where she muttered, "He thinks he's untouchable with his little dispatcher's son." She had no idea that little dispatcher had been tracking the source of her complaints. Legally, of course. Every anonymous call logged. Every report time-stamped. The city clerk's office confirmed what I already suspected. The complaints came from Cheryl's address, masked behind burner numbers she thought couldn't be traced. She wanted a war. I gave her the truth. I compiled everything into a digital report, neatly labeled, clearly sourced, and forwarded it to the local news outlet that had been covering neighborhood HOA overreach stories. They loved it. By the next morning, the headline was everywhere. Former HOA president caught harassing exempt homeowner. Dispatcher son helps expose abuse. Her face was blurred in the video, but the pastel suits and signature bun gave her away instantly. Comments poured in. "She tried that here too. This woman needs to be stopped. My HOA does the same stuff. Finally, someone stood up." Then came the call from the county compliance office. The fabricated reports Cheryl submitted. That's A Class A misdemeanor, misuse of public services, another strike, and using HOA power after being removed. Civil liability, it was all catching up to her. That afternoon, I sat on my porch with a glass of lemonade when a silver sedan pulled up to her house. Unmarked, but unmistakably official. 2 county officers stepped out, folders in hand. I didn't need to hear the conversation to know what was happening. They were serving her a formal cease and desist, warning her of pending charges. For years, Cheryl had played Queen of Sycamore Grove, answering to no one, hiding behind bylaws and keys, and thinly veiled threats. Now, she was being held accountable in the only language she understood: documentation and authority. The next morning, her house was quiet. No clipboard-wielding walks, no flyers, no HOA gossip on the community board. A few days later, a moving truck pulled up. She was leaving, not just the HOA, the neighborhood. A week after she vanished, the HOA board held their first public town hall. Without Cheryl, the tone shifted from enforcement to collaboration. The community discussed actual needs: speed bumps, playground repairs, a better pet waste policy. For once, it felt like a neighborhood, not a kingdom. Danny came over that Sunday. We grilled burgers, laughed about the chaos, and enjoyed the rare silence. "Think she'll try something again?" he asked, flipping a patty. "If she does," I said, "she'll find out this neighborhood isn't afraid of her anymore." He grinned. "That's poetic. A dispatcher shutting down a domestic tyrant." I raised my glass to well-timed karma. We clinked cups, but just as the laughter died down, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I stared at it, brow tightening. Tanny noticed. "Don't answer if you don't want to." I didn't. Instead, I let it ring out because I already knew who it was. Some people never learn, but the rest of us, we remember, we document, and we dispatch justice, one call at a time.